greenery lived a young boy named Kaito. The village was a close-knit community where everyone knew each other, but like any other place, it had its share of challenges and hardships. Kaito had a humble garden filled with vibrant flowers and delicious vegetables. He spent hours tending to his plants, finding solace and joy in nurturing them. His garden was not just a source of food, but a sanctuary where he felt connected to nature and the world around him. One day, while watering his plants, he saw Mrs. Tanaka, an elderly woman struggling with her groceries. Kaito rushed to help, his small hands reaching out to carry the heavy bags. Mrs. Tanaka was a widow who lived alone, and the weight of her loneliness was often heavier than the groceries she carried. As they walked, Mrs. Tanaka shared her sadness about losing her husband. Her voice trembled as she spoke, and Kaito listened intently, his young heart aching for her. He didn't have the words to take away her pain, but his presence and willingness to listen were enough to offer her some comfort. Kaito listened and offered comforting words. He told her about his garden and how taking care of the plants made him feel better when he was sad. Mrs. Tanaka smiled, touched by his innocence and the simple wisdom in his words. The next day, Kaito visited Mrs. Tanaka with a bouquet of fresh flowers from his garden. The flowers were a burst of colour and life, a small gesture that carried a big message of care and compassion. Touched by his kindness, Mrs. Tanaka asked how she could repay him. She was moved by the boy's generosity and wanted to do something in return. Kaito simply smiled and said, "Pay it forward, help someone else in need." His words were simple yet profound. He understood that kindness was not a transaction, but a gift that could be passed on. Months passed, and Mrs. Tanaka began volunteering at the local soup kitchen. She found a new sense of purpose.